How's your breath training going?
I've been actually reading and watching a lot of different things this week, so I can figure out one thing is that I wanted to know a little bit better is how to breathe during a workout, doing the workout, but also when you reach to the point where you are hyperventilating too much, and then you need to reduce your heartbeat in some way. And I've been, without really knowing, I've been trying to do some techniques by myself to breathing in and out in different ways and see if I could kind of calm down. The same that I do when I go to the ice bath. I'm trying to, I think it's the opposite. I'm trying to hyperventilate myself to increase the temperature. So I've been reading a little bit into this. Funny thing is that I see a lot of people saying one thing and another people saying kind of the opposite. Um, I'm guessing that is who is considering a high intensity workout or in which stage, because it's not the same when you are doing thrusters at the moment that you are doing the thrusters, so you can breathe in and out doing the movement. But when you stop, what do you do when you have these 10, 15 seconds, whatever it is, to grab the bar again? What can you do to reduce your heart rate? Because in my case, at least, I find myself sometimes in the middle of the word where I fucked up. I went too hard. I thought I could do it, but I went way too hard, and I'm now like kind of shaking. So that's what I've been reading. I think I kind of got the breathing technique that I should do to slow the heartbeat. But I wanted to ask you as well today, obviously.
Okay. Like I think breathing is such a super interesting and fundamental topic that everybody should know a little about. And I think one of the issues that I have with like most breathing systems is that they, like as you said, there's so many people saying one thing. There's so many techniques that some people do, and there's so many people so many techniques that other people do, and in the end, I think what's missing is a really good understanding of the physiology and also the neurology of breathing. And if you don't know that, I think it's very hard to evaluate each of these methods. And I think this is what you're seeing everywhere. For some people, doing Wim Hof breathing is amazing. It really helps them. If you're already in a hyperventilated state and you are like chronically like over exhaling CO2, I think it's not the best thing to do. So for some people, it might work amazingly well. For others, it might have the opposite effect. Like I know a couple of people that had like they got tinnitus and other stuff from hyperventilation. It's like a common. It's a not too uncommon side effect of like starting this breath training too early. But I think what's in essence lacking is a good understanding of what the technique of breathing that you do is actually doing with your body. So what is the aim of the technique? And I think so far we know that there is better and better research out there that highlights what's happening in the brain, what's happening in the body, why it's important to have a proper regulation of CO2 levels and oxygen levels. And I think based on all that knowledge, you can make an educated assessment of the breathing system that you're using. And I think very, very often it's just like, hey, do this kind of breathing, it's good for you. Do that kind of breathing, it's good for you. I think that's way too superficial. And I like to compare it. Actually, I think there's some interesting research out there for strength training as well. They did some genetic testing, and what they compared is which people like if you have the same volume, which people are better in having like really like little reps in each set, but more sets, or the opposite, having a lot of repetitions in a set, but way less set. And what they found out is that there's some correlation to like genetic mutations or your genetics, that some people fare really well on doing, let's say, not a lot of reps, but more sets compared to the other group. And I think it's like the specificity of applying one method or the other that's going to help you or not. And in essence, what I think is generally also important to understand is this reminds me of the discussion about like Mark Rippetoe when he talks about CrossFit. He says it's not training, it's exercising. And I think this is fundamentally not true. But his point is, like if you do any kind of sports, when you start out doing anything, if you haven't done something before, you probably will see some benefit. And I think a little bit with breathing, it's the same. If you suddenly start doing breath work, I think in most cases you'll see a benefit, even if it's not super specific to your needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Definitely. What I think one of the things that I've seen that everybody agrees is that we need to breathe more through our nose than our mouth. And yesterday training, it was the first time that I tried to implement that. Well, 2 days ago, but the 2 days ago was a little bit easier here at home. And I could do like sets of double unders without breathing with my nose, but it was more accessory work. It was 30 double unders and 30 squats, 40 double unders and 30 squats. So and sometime in the middle rest, like I think it was 1 minute rest, and I did it 10 times, something like this. So my heartbeat was never going too high, and I could always breathe through my nose. Yesterday, I went into a workout. It was pretty tough. One, I was not able to count the reps and count the breathings, the breathing rhythm through the nose. I couldn't, I was getting constantly messed up and loose. And then I was like, I'm breathing in or out. Should I use my mouth now? It was a little bit difficult. So I think you need some time to adapt. But obviously the first feeling that you feel is that you don't get enough air in when you breathe through your nose. First, because I think a lot of the time we have the nose blocked in some way for, dust or humidity, whatever it is. I also read that apparently the nostrils are closing down. One closed down, then the other is open, and then the other is, so,
Exactly. There's daily rhythms to which nasal passage you're using. So there will be times where you use the left one, then it switches over to the right one. And it is a little bit to do with brain activation. There's some cool research there's some yogi techniques where you do alternate nostril breathing. And you can, once again, it's a cool technique if you have issues with one side, but it's still very unspecific. But if you know that you have issues with one of your brain sides, what you'll realize is when you're, let me find the study, alternate nostril breathing, there is it. But the point is, when you know that you have issues with one side of your body or with one side of your brain that's not functioning properly, it might make sense to do single or one-sided nostril breathing a little bit more, because you will create like single-sided stimulus for the brain. So once again, you can be and breathing in and out. I'm doing it wrongly now, but breathing through one nostril and then to the other one, and you will still have a properly a better effect than doing nothing, or very likely. But you can still be way more specific if you know the neurology behind it. So yeah, that is true. I also think what you said initially about nasal breathing, it's something that everybody should practice. I think the research out there is not super conclusive. So what I mean by that is, if you look at the performance of really good athletes, at least the studies that I've read recently, they don't really see an effect on the power output. But what is still seen is a different level of perceived exertion for yourself. So by nasal breathing, what we most often see is, like, on the one hand, better breath control. I think this is one of the things that you mentioned. A lot of people start hyperventilating the workout because their CO2 levels go too high, and they're not used to higher CO2 levels, and that's why they start overbreathing. The issue with that is, if you overbreathe and you reduce the CO levels to a too low threshold, the gas exchange in the cell gets way less efficient. It is kind of counterintuitive. Most people think about having higher oxygen levels in their blood. So if you're normal, your oxygen levels are around 95 to like almost 100%. So you almost have always full saturation. So your hemoglobin is always having full saturation of oxygen. So the oxygen is never the problem. If you think about hyperventilating and all the chronic issues that we see with breathing, has most often to do with CO, with carbon dioxide levels. And when we breathe too much, we're actually not increasing the oxygen levels, but we are decreasing the levels of CO2. And you can think about it as a thermostat that the CO2 level, if it crosses a certain threshold, you will have an increased stimulus for breathing. It kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
if you
need to get rid of that.
Yeah, if you do some like heavy work, your muscles produce CO2 because they're burning energy.
Yeah.
You want to get rid of that CO2. By overbreathing, what happens though is you need to think about if the threshold is up here, and then you're constantly overbreathing, your CO2 levels in the blood are going lower and lower and lower and lower. So the threshold gets lower and lower. So the moment you do something just a little, and the threshold is passed, you have an urge to overbreathe.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, this means that actually the gas exchange in the cell itself, if the CO2 level is too low, doesn't function properly anymore. Or it still functions, it doesn't function that well. So by making sure that you're able to tolerate really high CO2 levels in the blood, you're actually allowing the body to be way more efficient at the gas exchange as well. And that's why I think also nasal breathing is really cool, and being able to resist the urge to always refer to mouth breathing. In the end, you know what? If you do like a super high intensity effort, like think about the 200 to 400 meter run all out, or being on the assault bike for a minute, most people, because you need a little bit more air volume, will probably go back to mouth breathing. But I would really save it for the highest intensities that we normally often do not see in CrossFit in that way. If you're doing a normal workout, I think you should be able to do the whole workout with nasal breathing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that, I think it's easy. Well, I think I watched something that they say, I can't remember who was it, that you're not supposed to exercise more or a higher level than what allows your body to breathe through your nose. So if you need to breathe through your mouth, you shouldn't do it. But obviously, if you're competing or you're training CrossFit or things like that, that you're going to go all in at some point, probably is not the healthiest anyway to do, 100 thrusters and 100 just to a workout, probably not. So you are doing it just for the sport, for the fitness, whatever. You might need to breathe through your mouth at some point. Otherwise, like yesterday, I wasn't able to breathe in enough air to sustain the training. And what I normally try to do when I'm hyperventilated, when I'm feeling quite tired, I try to stop between exercises or rounds or reps or whatever. And then I do one deep nose breathe and one short nose breathe in, and then exhale everything. So I'm just trying, and also trying to, something that I've been reading lately as well, we shouldn't be breathing in with our chest, but we need to breathe with our belly. So it is also kind of changing of directions of the typical thing that seems that everybody does, just like charging in air, and then you need to do it with your belly first, and then you can do the thoracic part. But then, so that's, I think,
like for CrossFitters, I think the hardest part is going back to learning proper breathing patterns. Meaning, as you said, it should be more nostril breathing unless you're reaching super high intensity levels, and it should be I wouldn't even say belly breathing, but it shouldn't be upper chest breathing. So when you constantly do this to inhale, you're always using musculature that shouldn't be supposed to use when you normally breathe. If you're doing like an all-out sprint, of course you're going to use your diaphragm, you're using your chest muscles, your traps, your whatever, all the muscles that pull the rib cage apart to get more oxygen in. That kind of makes sense. But a lot of people, they rely on those muscles and the diaphragm is not working properly. And then you have huge issues because these muscles use energy as well. And quite a bit. I think in really high intensity efforts, the breathing musculature uses or can use up to 30% of
the energy.
of all the energy that your body is actually consuming. That's quite a bit. And if you're not efficient with breathing, this probably goes up higher and higher as well. And then there's like a reflex, it's called metabolic reflex. When you have the feeling that you don't get enough oxygen, that most of the blood goes from the periphery, from the muscles, the periphery, the legs and the arms towards the lungs, so that the body tries to get more oxygen in. So I think going back to the basics and making sure first that you have proper breathing patterns makes it way easier for you in the long run to keep these breathing patterns in a workout. And like just doing simple exercises like lying on the ground, putting a hand on your belly, a hand on your chest, and making sure that the hand on the belly is moving first before the hand on the chest moves. I think is a great way of doing this. But I think the caveat with that is a lot of people, especially in the CrossFit world, they really want to force that. And what I mean by force, without any breathing, I can push my hand out when I contract my belly musculature. And a lot of people, they don't breathe. What they do is they engage their core musculature to get the same effect of pushing against the hand. This is totally not what you want to do. So the goal is that by descending, that the diaphragm is descending, that you are like, one cool side effect is that you're mobilizing all the internal organs. It's a really, really cool, there's a doc called Dr. Perry Nicholson. He's a really, really, really cool guy that's focusing on the lymphatic system. And like one of the quotes that I read yesterday is, I really liked it. He said, it's your diaphragm is your massage gun for your internal organs. And this is kind of true. Your liver, I think when you're breathing properly, may move up to 10 centimeters up and down when you breathe properly through your diaphragm. If you constantly do upper chest breathing, all these internal organs get stuck and there's no movement anymore. This might cause a lot of distress and also movement disability, because when you start moving your trunk now, the things don't move well and they create sensory feedback for the brain that might be, hey, we don't want you to move that much or don't do that movement. So I think this is really nice. And well, what else did I want to say? So it's a massage for the internal organs. Well, and it trains the diaphragm. I don't know what my second point was now, but the goal is not to use the abs, but really focusing like have a descending motion of the diaphragm. And if you're able to do that, I think the next step is, can you do this in a seated position? Okay, because now gravity is acting differently. And then the third step would be, can you do standing? Can you do that standing? And then maybe when you want to go a step further, I'm going down into a squat and I see if I can maintain a proper breathing pattern. And then I can probably go, okay, I go up and down and I try to maintain belly pattern.
That was difficult to me, to be honest. I tried deadlift, clean, squat clean yesterday. And I'm thinking I'm pretty okay with breathing first to the belly and then inflating the chest. So belly and then thoracic going 1 and then 2. But when I'm going to do a deadlift or squat clean or something like this, I kind of feel more comfortable with the all pattern breathing. Yeah, exactly. So just, one, if I'm using a lifting belt, you have to bring your belly goes in, you tighten the belt, so then this part is already more constrained. So you still need to inflate it, but obviously the belt is kind of blocking the so I'm not sure how to handle that.
You know what I think the issues with doing CrossFit, when you do heavy lifting in workouts, I think it kind of changes a little bit what you should be doing. If the weight gets really heavy, I think it totally makes sense to do something like a Valsalva maneuver, where you inhale and close down your glottis so that there's no trying to push against the glottis when you're doing the movement, so that you create a lot of inter-abdominal pressure. What I think a lot of people are actually doing not that well is really creating inter-abdominal pressure. And what I mean by this is, if you have that tendency that you just showed, is you breathe in when you start your squatting, so you go like, this doesn't create any inter-abdominal pressure. What it does is, if you squat, it's really bad because the bar is high up. So you actually already using more effort to elevate the bar with the muscles, which is probably not smart. So you have this upper chest breathing, you have an expansion of the chest, but because your diaphragm is not descending, you never create intra-abdominal pressure. So the goal is that you actually want to stabilize your lower back. This is way more prone to flexing and extending. So the goal by doing the Valsalva maneuvers, like trying to get as much air down here so that this is more stable. And what a lot of people do is like you did, they do go like this. And this is really bad because now I'm not creating that intra-abdominal pressure. Even when you use the belt, you tighten up the belt, you inhale, and you really breathe in a lot of air into your chest. The goal should be you breathe in and create pressure against the belt.
So what I do is, if I don't have a belt, I breathe out. So I make the core thicker. That's what if I don't have a belt. If I have a belt, then first I breathe in to tighten the belt, and then I try to breathe out, but then not breathe out, just to inflate the belly. But then obviously the belt is blocking me, so I'm not able to. So I'm not sure if I should just be neutral, put the belly, and then push out.
You know what I would do is, and I think that's the second misconception. If you want to create inter-abdominal pressure, I'll do this like little strip here now. If I'm like in this position and I go like this when I inhale, this is also not what I'm doing. Now I have a lot of expansion. If I let that expansion occur, what happens is that I'm not really creating intra-abdominal pressure. Now the diaphragm is descending, it's pushing, like all these things move apart. So the goal actually is to engage the abs, keep them in, and then trying to inhale against the abdominals. So I want my diaphragm to descend. I want to push air down here so that the air, because of the expansion of the air and the expansion of the diaphragm into the bottom, is met with resistance. And now I'm creating more and more pressure, inside pressure, and that pressure is stabilizing the spine. And what we oftentimes see is that people, I think this is good now, when they do their inhale, they go like, okay, so now the diaphragm is in a really bad position because you're overextended. It doesn't work that properly. You should think about having not a straight, but a neutral spine. And when you inhale, the abs should be working. It's this kind of movement. It's not that.
I can see what you mean. And it's funny that most of the people think that the overextension, the chest out, it's the best one, and also it seems like you breathe better, but it's the opposite because you are constraining the diaphragm and the lungs and everything. So I think it's a total different concept that people have when breathing and also like even position.
It's so interesting that you mentioned it. I really changed the way how I teach setting up for a deadlift and a lot of these other movements. I think one of the key issues that I'm looking for is, of course, that the low back is in a neutral but not overextended position. But what I totally went away from is teaching extension of the neck, because so many people, when they extend their neck, they're actually doing something like this because this is the position they always have when they're sitting in front of their computer screen. So I'm putting way more emphasis in my coaching now on having this neutral neck position when you deadlift, instead of going like this and then rounding. And for most people, what they immediately see is that they get strong in these positions. I think there's a really nice test that you can do. I've stolen it from, I don't know if it was Tony Blauer, the guy who invented the spear method. It's like a self-defense method. And they go like, hey, I'm going to do like a kind of like a spear-like moving when somebody is attacking me. And there's a couple of interesting things with that is your extensors are fairly strong if they're in the right position. And what you can test for yourself, if you have a body, that your body is kind of like hugging your arm and trying to bend your arm, and you try to keep it straight. And you try to keep it straight. And the moment you go into too much extension of the neck, what you'll see is that you're not able to keep your arm extended anymore, because there seems to be through that extension some compression of the nerves that is not ideal when you want to generate a lot of force, and that allows you to not generate that much force anymore. And suddenly your arm needs to bend even if you want to keep it straight. So I think one of the key issues is that this one needs to go down. And the other thing is, I think so many people already start when they're squatting and deadlifting, they start in an overextended position of the spine where it should be neutral. And again, I think it's not that problematic. It's also not that problematic if you're in slight flexion, you can control that flexion. I still think it's not ideal. And especially for breathing, if you're constantly overextended, your diaphragm has a mechanical disadvantage and is not able to function properly. But I think just Valsalva maneuver, practicing Valsalva without doing, or is a really good thing. So you try to keep this down. I mean, it can still expand a little, but the belly needs to be on, and I want to breathe down into my belly. And then I'm going to squat. I think that's the right sequence of stabilization. Otherwise, just letting the belly protrude out without having any resistance, the air goes down, the organs move. There's not a lot of pressure generated in the abdomen.
Yeah, so, taking the example of the deadlift or even a squatting probably works. I'm pretty sure that the technique for breathing and positioning changes when you do 1 or 2 reps than when you do 25 within a workout, for example. So obviously, I guess that will change in some way. But would you recommend to have the core at any point, even if you do 3 reps? Obviously, if you do 20 reps, you might not be able to keep it. But maybe you keep it, every time you break, then you engage again. To keep the core tight, and then, try to have that pressure, that internal pressure, by having the core pretty tight, and then still breathing in and out with the belly, as you say. First, having the belly tight, breathe through the diaphragm from the belly, even that you say that it's not the belly that breathes, but just to understand a little bit, and then going to the thoracic part of the body. Because I think most of the time what we do is more the bring the belly in to kind of get more air, but seems that this is not the ideal way. You need to just have this compress and try to, inflate and then.
Yeah, I think that if you do very heavy lifting, I think it's a smart idea to being able to generate a lot of stability and strength via using reflexes in regards to breathing. So like the Valsalva maneuver, like you're trying to generate a lot of body tension, which there's if you look at the Russian literature, I think Pavel Tsatsouline, the kettlebell guy, he mentions in one of his books the concept of irradiation. So if you hold the bar not super tightly when you do a deadlift, you will not see great engagement of all the muscles in the arm and also in the shoulder. If you really grip the bar firmly, it allows you to generate a lot of tension in your body. So I think that the goal, if you're doing a really heavy lift, is that you focus on stabilization strategies that really prevent the spine from moving. I think this is not totally necessary to that extent when you're doing a normal workout with submaximal loading. I think it's actually to the contrary, it's getting very inefficient to move like that.
Exactly, because you need to use too much strength or energy to move a weight that you are able to move it 20, 30 times. So you need to save that energy instead of being totally engaged. Moving 80 kilos in deadlift 80 kilos for 30 times, you don't really need to, engage absolutely everything and be really tight.
And you know what I think the issue is stabilization is something that should happen reflexively up to a point. So of course it makes sense if you're using loads that are way above what any normal human being is able to lift. It's probably a good idea to learn to consciously stabilize the core. But if you deadlift 180 kilos or 200 or 250 kilos and you're doing a workout with 60 kilos or 80 kilos in the deadlift, your stabilization should happen reflexively without you thinking about it. It's still a very light load. And I think what I thought about this yesterday because I had a client in the evening. He had 2 spinal surgeries and now he's getting pain again. And his movement capacity was totally diminished. He tried a bending over, and I explained to him as well is different parts of the brain are regulating muscle tone for flexor and extensor muscles. And if the tone is not properly synchronized, it's very hard for joints to move properly. And he was just below his knee. And then I did some crazy eye jumps and some like stimulation of his scar tissue in the back, and he told me this was the first time in 4 years that he was able to touch his toes again. And yeah, like, it was really amazing. And you can see these guys are really poor because they don't know what to do. They have been doing surgery, they've been doing physiotherapy and all that stuff, which all might help if you're hitting the right problem. But if you're not hitting the right problem, all these things won't help very well. I experience that quite often myself. Is I'm doing something and I realize this is not the issue that the client has. Okay, I'm not really, I don't know how to tape properly. If I do some scar tissue and I find out, okay, a mobilization of the scar tissue one way really helps, of course I can put tape on you. And I know a little bit how to do it, but I'm not a professional. I say, hey, go somewhere and get the tape and tell him the direction of the tape. The pull needs to be this way. Or at this moment, I think what you need is actually manual therapy. I think getting deep pressure into certain tissues will help you. I'm not an expert on that, and I don't want to do it. So I'm going to tell them, hey, find somebody that is doing some manual work in these areas with you to get a result. But very often, just doing manual work doesn't work. There's so many people that they don't have like a local specific problem. What they have is they have a brain issue, and then doing other stuff has way more effect. I think it's just realizing which hammer you need to use to fix a problem. If you only have one, there's only one nail that you can hit. But the point of that was, if I'm not able, if my brain thinks I'm not able to properly stabilize the spine when I do this, it will say, okay, I'm not allowing you to move anymore. That's it. Your range is here. And it's reflexively. There's nothing that you consciously do. When I try to reach, there's a point where I can't go any lower if my brain says no. And then by adjusting the stabilization strategies the brain is using, I can suddenly increase the range of motion, because now my brain says, okay, I can regulate flexions and extensions differently. The tone changes. I have more movement capacity. And this is what I mean. It should be kind of reflexive as well. Does that make sense?
Just following with the deadlift, just one small question. It's not that much related to breathing, but as you say, the neck should be neutral. But when you are doing Olympic weightlifting and you are doing the first part, obviously, if you're looking down, you're gonna go forward because you're not having the proper position where the chest is going up, the neck is kind of a little bit pushed. In my case, for example, I have a pretty bad deadlift position, so I'm not able to be like, the typical Chinese, ass down, head up, looking totally up. I'm impossible to do that. So then I need to compensate a little bit by pulling my neck back. So what would you recommend, or how would you do it? And that also impacts the way that you breathe, because it's not ideal to be looking down.
So like one thing is doing something very sport specific, and I think weightlifting has a different requirement on your body than doing, for example, heavy deadlifting. And what I mean by that is it's because you have fast transitions in body position. You need to have better balance and balancing strategies, and your eyes are very much involved into figuring out where you are in space. So it absolutely makes sense when you do like a setup for a whatever snatch, that you kind of fix a point in front of you so that you know better where you are in space, instead of looking down and then having a fast transition of the head and the scenery is changing, and it just makes it harder for your brain to figure out where you are, and this will probably slow down your movement. That's why almost all weightlifters, if you don't have the right proportions and you can keep your neck straight like this or whatever, I don't even know if I'm straight now, but most people will start with a slight extension. What I would be cautious of is there are some people that really go into like this crazy neck extension, which I think in the end can be quite harmful to your cervical spine. If you do that constantly under heavy load, I think it's not the best thing to do. So I wouldn't worry too much if you have slight extension of the neck, even if you have slight overextension of your spine in weightlifting. And you see that with almost all weightlifters is that they have this like more kind of like this body position. They are
Yeah.
a lot of them are in that overextended position. I think it's the parts are the nature of the sport.
Yeah. Within the Olympic weightlifters, I mean the top tier of the weightlifters, you can see the ones that are always first, second, especially the those divisions where the best one is going after everybody has done all their lifts. You can see that the proportions and position, it's just perfect. You see, like, especially if you see some of the Chinese that they are super flexible, you see like a straight back, totally straight. Everything is really well engaged. They don't need to do any dynamic start. It's just the bar is straight. They just grab the bar and go up and down. Perfect, beautiful. And I'm talking, I'm comparing them to the second best. It's not that I'm comparing them with any regular guy around here. They are lifting maybe 10, 15 kilos more out of a stupidly high amount of weight.
Yeah.
But you can still see some guys that are lifting, 115 snatch, and then some others 162, which is both of them are impressive. But the 150 has some, bending your arms. Maybe the position is not perfect. You can see a little bit force the neck back, and then the one with 162 is just like get the bar perfect and go up and down in the same straight line.
You know what I think is really interesting? There's a cool quote from Tony Robbins, and it says, "Success leaves clues." And I think what I would do
is what success?
Success leaves clues.
Okay,
clues what people are doing. And I'll give you a different example because I thought, or I was working a lot with some tennis players. But if you look at the best tennis players in the world, like go to Roger Federer or
Djokovic.
Yeah, Djokovic. What you really see is that the ball is coming in, they focus the ball, they hit the ball while still looking at the ball is going away, and then they look into the direction where the ball goes. Any player that is not that good, what you'll see is the ball comes in, they know where the ball is going, they hit the ball, but they're already looking somewhere else. And it's the same thing. If you want to make somebody better at playing tennis, I think one of the highest things that you need to, or the highest priorities, is to actually make them track the ball until they hit the ball, and then they can look where the ball should be going. But the accuracy that you get from like really tracking the ball down to the end is way more efficient. This is what I mean by, if you look at really good players, they all do it. Then there might be differences in how they start their stroke. If it's from the bottom, it's a little higher up, if there's more or less rotation. But I think there's some key principles that really good people follow that allow them to be that good. And I think it's the same with weightlifting. If you look at the Chinese weightlifters, I think what they are excellent at doing is, for example, the bar, when they move, is almost moving straight up and down. There's not a lot of horizontal sway in the bar pad. This seems to be kind of like an intelligent principle to follow. If you look at less decent weightlifters, even good ones, you see that the bar is making this, it comes in, it goes out, then it comes back in again. I think the closer it stays to that vertical line, depending on your body position, the more efficient you will be. I think if you always go really high on your toes, if you lean back too much, I think these are all little deficiencies that still allow you to get away with lifting a lot of weight. If you're a decent athlete, you can lift a shitload of weight. I think it's still not optimal. You know what I mean? The question was is, what could these guys lift when they would have better technique?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like having a shitty kipping pull-up, and you're still strong and have a good engine.
Do as many as you can, yeah.
You can probably do 40, 45, 50 without any issue. I think if you would have a really good technique, you could probably do 60 or 65. Yeah. And I think it's the same in here. You see people doing deadlifts and they crazily hyperextend. They can still lift a shitload of weight. I think one of the issues is, hey, what's the risk of really getting hurt? And I think in this case, even if your body adapts, I think it's still a substantial risk that I would not take for myself, going into like just that crazy hyperextension of the neck. And what's happening to your performance? And in some cases, it might only be a performance decrease of like 1% or 0.5%. But in the long run, it's the difference between, if you want to break a world record, 0.5% is actually a lot. And and you know, I think that the other thing, if you look at like elite level athletes, I think the issue sometimes is if you have trained something specifically for 15 years, now it's very hard to change it.
True.
You know what I mean? If I'm used to lift with a really overextended spine, and I've trained this movement pattern for 20,000 hours, or 30,000 hours, it will be very, very hard to change it. And it might be in the short term impossible to reach the numbers that you have reached before when you start switching it.
Yeah, exactly. That's in my case, for example, I do a lot of early arm bending. It's not always, and I try to change it, and I even do it with 40 kilos, so with no weight. Basically, the bar I could lift it as in any way, and I think I'm straight. I think I'm not doing it, and when I see the videos, I'm still doing it. So I've been trying to change it a little bit, and then activating something different, opening more or less, whatever it is. It gets to the point where I'm not able to get rid of the arm bending, just maybe a slightly different or a slightly less, but then the lifts are way less than they're way less heavy. And I'm still doing it as bad, not as bad, but maybe, 1 degree less or 1 degree more, whatever. And I've been doing this for forever. So now trying to change it is kind of, well, one, I don't really know how properly doing it. I think it will take me many years to do it properly. So many years of not being able to lift heavy because I'm not able to do it without bending my arms. So it is a really good point that I think CrossFit had too many years of the 3-2-1 go in any way. I still see some coaches that are like, go. No, you don't have to go always like that. Go whenever you know how to go.
I had a discussion yesterday with a trainer over there. Like he said he worked with the beginner. I was watching the class. I was like, fuck, these deadlifts are really shitty. And he said he was actually trying to scale it. It was still shitty. He was not able to coach it well. And he told me that, you know what, I wanted to give him a good workout. It's his first time here. I wanted to like really feel that. Like, you know what? This guy has been sitting in the office for 10 years. Whatever you do, he's going to get in a really good workout. Make him understand, learn how to move properly. It's not about letting him move fast. It's more about give him a PVC pipe, let him go into the position, but make sure the position is good. And he will be working his ass off, even if he moves slowly and even if he's not doing a lot of repetitions. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. And I think this is also why it's so important to start with the basics and teach them really well. Because if you're 5 years in,
that's it.
It takes a lot of effort to change something. And
if you can change it, I think.
Yeah, if you can change it. I mean, I think it's a lot of cognitive effort, and it probably requires to adapt your training. Like in your example, for example, I think if you really want to fix it, I think you shouldn't be doing any kind of weightlifting like Isabel, in a workout setting where it's only about speed. What I would recommend is that you do like EMOM stuff for 15 minutes. You do 2 reps, but you always have time to, hey, this is the thing I'm focusing on. So that you get a lot of repetitions in, but they're in a way more controlled setting without too much metabolic fatigue, so that you can really work the technique. If you're doing a lot of lifting in a workout setting where it's about only speed or mainly speed, I think it will be almost impossible to change it.
Yeah, or weight.
Yeah.
So it's funny that the technique decreases when the weight increased, which should be the opposite way, right? So the heavier that it is, the more pulling in the wrong way that I normally do. Not only me, I think many people do. Many people do that when they are not, they are not perfectionists in the technique. Then it's like, okay, I have an okay technique, but when I'm going close to my 80%, then I'm starting to do something weird. And I can see that in Noah Olsen, for example. He does that. He's an excellent athlete and lifter, but sometimes when he's lifting heavier, then you can see bending a little bit too much, like one leg in front of the other, stupid things that you're like, why are you doing? If you're a professional athlete, you should be able to do that. And I think most of the people do it.
Have you seen the video of the Chinese weightlifter? It's such a cool video, because I think that's where you see the attention to detail. She's going to a jerk position, and I think the video generally shows her and her coach, where he's, I think 500 times in a row adjusting the position of her foot in the back.
I think I've seen some. I think I've seen it.
He turns the heel in, he always goes and turns it out, in, out, in, out. And it goes like this for like 200 reps. And a lot of people are not willing to do that in their own training. But in the end, I think if you want to be excellent at something, you really need to focus on these little details as well. And a lot of people
probably why those communist countries are good in these sports, because it's not whatever the athlete want, it's whatever the coach, and the coach knows that the tone needs to be like this. Until it's not like this, you are not progressing, you are not doing anything else.
And you know what, I think that's also really good for athletes. That's what I also oftentimes see in gyms, is that the coaches are not strict enough with their standards, or that there are differences in strictness between the coaches, and there's quite big differences as well. And then there's no common theme, and then people never change, because one coach says, hey, put your heel in, the next one goes, whatever, it's not that bad, and then it's not that bad. And then if you have a very high standard, it's almost impossible to change anything, because the feedback is very inconsistent. But I think if you have a really good standard for all your coaches, they all know, hey, this is really important, they will all focus on it, and then you always get the same feedback, and it's like, okay, I'll better do what the coach says now. Go ahead, sorry.
When I talk with a few coaches or box owners, that they don't struggle that much with new people, as you say, the guy that has been 10 years in the office and then comes in for the first time, but they struggle more with the people that they've been doing CrossFit or any weightlifting for 2, 3, 4 years, and then they have a decent amount of strength. They have a technique, not the best, but they have some kind of technique with some flaws, obviously. What they told me in the past is that if they tell these guys too many times, you're doing it wrong, you need to correct, don't put too much weight, then people leave from the box. So then, there is an ego part. One is the ego, but I think it's also, especially guys, we want to lift heavy. We want to be the best one. We want to compete against that guy. So for guys especially to say, no, I'm going to step back, I'm going to stop putting 80 kilos, I'm going to go to 50 or 60, and I'm going to do many reps, try to focus on technique. It requires a lot, mental power, whatever it is. And a lot of coaches are like, you try a couple of times, when the guy gets even mad by you telling them, stop putting weight or slow down, whatever it is. They obviously want to keep their members. They don't want to lose members. So I think it is a difficult kind of.
You know what I really think in a lot of cases, the issues. I think people, a lot of coaches are not able to teach properly in beginners and in more advanced people. And what's happening then is that you start by not putting people into optimal positions. You're not able to fix it. They carry this on for quite a bit of time, and then you want to fix these positions when people are doing more and heavier loads. So I think it goes a little bit back to like a lack of skill in regards to how to set up your classes and how to coach them. And what I generally see, if you can't fix somebody that is a beginner, you probably can't fix somebody that is more advanced. I think that's point number one. Point number two is very often, and I think this goes back to, like, there's a cool book about, or a cool concept about learning theory. It's called optimal learning, or optimal learning theory. It's an acronym. And I think one of the main tenets that they have is your athlete needs to feel successful. And this is kind of like human nature. As you said, it really sucks if I tell you 50 times, no, it's not good. No, it's not good. So I think what we should be doing as coaches is, I'll give an example how to make you succeed. If I have a person, I had that yesterday in my trial class, and I'll tell her, okay, like this is the bottom of the squat that I want you to hold, and she goes down and she's not able to hold it. Of course, I can tell her, hey, you need to keep your knees up, you need to do this. But if I constantly repeat only the shitty feedback, I'm making her unsuccessful in what she's doing. Mm-hmm. So for me, as a coach, what I want to make sure of is that I give her the chance to succeed. And this might be, and it sounds really simple, but it might be, hey, you know what? I want you to go only down to here, touch it slightly, keep it up, and stand up. And now I am happy. You are happy because you're doing it well. I can say, hey, this is what I want you to do. And for weightlifting, I think it's the same thing. If you have an issue with an early arm pull, the hardest part is the transition over the knee to get into a position. So a lot of people, when you don't have the proper transition, it's very hard to not pull too early with the arms. And then I think, like, what can you do to mitigate that problem is probably that you need to let them start from the hang. Maybe allow them to use a little bit more weight, but let them start from the hang. If the issue is somewhere else, try to figure out, like, well, what the problem is. But I think very often it goes back to, hey, I still let you do everything, but then I want you to fix that one thing that you're not able to fix when you do everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you have an issue and I think that's what you mentioned, a lot of people, when they weightlift, I think they're still using their arms way too much instead of using them to pull themselves under the weight. And what happens then is, it's very well written in the Buch für Deutsche Gewichtheber, the book for German weightlifters. It says, hoher Zehenstand ist zu vermeiden, that you're standing too long on your toes. And very often what people want to do, and this is actually the main difference between really good weightlifters and bad ones, is how high the bar really gets. If you look at elite weightlifters, it's like the bar is right above
all the way up, yeah.
And then they move under the bar. If you look at almost all other weightlifters that are not that good, whatever you see, the bar is getting higher and higher. Yeah. And you see they're using too much their arms to get the bar higher up, and they're not pulling under at the right moment. And I think this is, you watch some of the Chinese weightlifters, what you'll see when they lift is they also bend the arm, but they're not pulling with the arm. They just bend it to engage the lat a little bit more and get the bar into a better position. But it's still that bump and pulling under that allows them to go under the bar quickly. So I think it's understanding where the problem is and then trying to find a very specific solution to the problem in that setting. This might mean, you know what, we're going to do, if the workout is Isabel, 60 kilos, and this is your issue, you know what we're going to do? We go, whatever, every minute on the minute for 10 minutes, and you're going to do like a snatch pull. We're focusing on straight arms. Then maybe you're doing a snatch pull from the hang, focusing on straight arms, and then you do one full snatch from the hang, and not from, and the only focus that you have is extension pull under, extension pull under. Getting rid of everything else so that you can be able to succeed in what I'm trying to achieve with you as a coach. And I think the hard part is like building that trust with your athletes. I think if your athletes are not really trusting you in the process, it's very hard to change it, because they go like, yeah, whatever, I can lift 80 kilos. Yeah, you can lift 80 kilos with shitty form. Have fun progressing. It's the same with, because you said no, also I think it's the same with rowing. I judged at the regionals and the games quite often, and there were still times where like how the heck is this guy not able to row properly?
Sometimes I see professional athletes, professional CrossFitters rowing or doing some basic exercise in a really bad way. Yeah.
What the fuck? I mean, every coach at my box knows how to teach somebody how to row. Like, how the fuck can you be 5 years into like a very professional athletic journey, not understanding how to row? And I mean, it's kind of like a no-brainer. You look at the force curve. Your force curve is really slow in the first, and then there's a steep inclination. You just have a shitty technique on the rower. Why don't you fix it? And I think a lot of people don't have that. The coaches that are strict enough in the beginning, and then you have all the issues.
It's too difficult.
And then in the end, it's very difficult to change it.
I think it's something that you need to change from the very beginning. Later on, obviously, later on you can change it, but I think it's difficult to readapt when you already do something and it works. Nobody can say that no, Olsen is not good at rowing. I mean, you know, he rows pretty good. He goes fast, or he doesn't get tired, whatever it is. But how good he could be if he was doing the technique properly. And the same like Pat Bellner not being able to swim. Like, it's been 3 fucking years that you are the last one at swimming. There is something about your swimming technique or whatever it is that should be fixed.
That you should fix. Yeah, I agree.
I think Fraser, even that I don't agree with many of the things that Fraser says or does, but nobody can say that he excelled on destroying his weaknesses. Anything that it was considered a weaknesses, he destroyed that and made that weaknesses a strength, which is just insane. That's why he's the best.
It reminds me so much about Coach Glassman, what he said when he like came up with that whole concept of doing CrossFit. He said, your main goal as an athlete should be to find your weaknesses and then really focus on getting rid of that weakness. Yeah. And I think that's also holds so much true in the general box setting. that people want to do more hours, more work. They want to do like 2.5 sessions every day instead of just being consistent with addressing what you suck at. You know, most people, of course, it's not fun. If you're not good on the rower, initially it's no fun to go 2 times a week on the rower and do some interval work on the rower. But in the end run, in the end, I think for me and for most other people, I think that go to the gym, I enjoy the minimum effective dose principle. Like otherwise, I could train for 8 hours a day as well. What I really enjoy, I enjoy training, but I don't want to do it for 3 hours. I want to work. I want to spend time with my kids. And I think by being smart about what you suck at, and then like really focusing on hammering it with the least effort possible, I think that this is where the results are. And you saw it with Fraser. 1 year he was really bad at running or rowing. The next year he's really good at it.
He was the best one.
Yeah, it's dedicated practice. And a lot of people just go like, oh, whatever, me.
Yeah. It's funny because people want to go to the gym to have fun, but at the same time they want to compete. So then, you know, compete, training for competing, I don't think it's necessarily fun, at least 100% of the time. You have a part where it's just, you know, suck it up and do those 100 thrusters and those 100 chest to bar, and it's not going to be fun because, you know, it's a volume that you need to accumulate, and you might have some other things that are going to be fun. But that's what I believe on following a program from somebody else. Otherwise, I will never program thrusters. I will never program wall balls. But if it's there, you know, you have to do it. And I'm actually trying to do always as much of my weaknesses instead of doing power clean. I'm good at power clean. I'm trying not to do power clean. When I hit, you know, I have a program that has 5 or 6 letters, blocks. So I normally have to remove some of them because people that train with me, they do 2 sessions or 4 hours in a row or something like this. So I just remove blocks, and I normally remove the ones that I'm okay at it. So power clean, if there is power clean, front squat, I go for the front squat always, because I know that the power clean, I can always do it. I practice a little bit. There is always power clean in workouts or whatever it is. And to be honest, it becomes fun when even that you are bad at it, and I don't really care if I front squat 20 kilos less than the other guys, but I know that if I don't do it, then I will squat 40 kilos less than them. You know, it's so funny. I took over a gym, and the program that they ran over there, I think was generally a good program, but I think for an hour it was always a little bit too much. There was always heavy lifting, and there was always like workouts with different skills in it. And then I think there are 2 issues with that is, and I always ask people, you know, what they always say, like, hey, they want to go out of the gym and kind of like being totally exhausted all the time. And I think we talked about that as well. And I think if your main goal, honestly, go sit on a fucking assault bike and go 5 minutes for 20 minutes.
5
minutes in assault bike. Yeah, that's it.
Or do a couple of burpees, go on the bike, kill yourself, and that's it. It takes 5 minutes to kill yourself. I think that's not what CrossFit is about. I think the beauty of CrossFit is that you develop a lot of different skills, that you develop the strength through these skills well, and not just getting a crazy intense workout in without having the proper form. And I think that what I ask a lot of people then is, hey, you know what, you've been training for 5 years, 4 times a week consistent. Can you do a muscle up? Can you deadlift twice your body weight? Can you do Fran in under 4 minutes? Can you do this, this, and this? And if they say no, I say, you know what, I think there's something wrong with the program that you're following. And sometimes there's too much of it. It's always too much volume. If you have a lot of other stress in your life, it's probably a negative for your performance, not increasing your performance. And the other thing is, if you are never able to develop skills because you never spend time for developing these skills, you won't get better either. So I think also this discussion about the 2 things in a class, I think this works well if you are very advanced. You know, I can do a squatting session in, even if it's heavy, in let's say 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. And that's it. I do a very brief warm-up. I know where I need to warm up. This does not work in a gym setting. Like I've been doing this for forever. Of course I can do it quickly, but most people are not there yet. And then they never squat really heavy. They never develop the skill of squatting properly, and then they never develop the other skills. And they stick around with shitty scaling options for the rest of their life. It's like,
or they get hurt.
Knee push-ups for 3 years. It's fucking crazy. Yeah, great, good job. Knee push-ups for 3 years. Wonderful.
I think what I've seen, especially in guys, they might, because they need to put it in a class, and they want to lift heavy because that's what guys always want in general. So then they start with not the best technique, and they keep that technique with 40 kilos to 100 kilos, and then they ended up getting hurt because, as you know, we spent 3 days in Vienna doing a squatting, and you were checking at my squat. I'm now doing a lot of other things to try to correct the pain or the imbalance that I have in my squat. And it takes a lot of not fun time to do. Like, nobody wants to do a squat with the band, elastic band, pulling the elastic band back, or Bulgarian split, or whatever it is. And I'm trying to squat to the level that if I feel pain or the body is unbalanced, then I stop and I try to do the other way around. I think in the class, people need to, it's the constant 3, 2, 1, go and get fucked up in a workout. It works sometimes, but I think in general, it's better to accumulate proper work than just destroy yourself in the gym. In the long term, it's going to be detrimental for you to go all in every single day.
If you look at elite weightlifters, they spend 85% of their time, or more than 85%, below or around 80% of their
max.
And you know what they do? They get a lot of really nice reps in and trying to improve their technique. You very rarely see weightlifters in a session that miss 3 or 4 reps in a row. It just doesn't happen. There's no sense in, when you lift heavy, fucking up your technique or screwing up your technique and then trying to ingrain bad movement patterns. And I think this is what a lot of people in CrossFit really get wrong, is it's movement patterns first. You need to be able to move well before you add intensity. And this can be initially, you need to maybe come up with workouts where you do higher intensity stuff on something that they can't screw up. I can put you on the assault bike and go like, hey, go a little hard on the bike. Then we do something else. You focus on intensity on the bike, you do the rest a little slower, do a little less reps, still get a good workout in, because that's what people underestimate. And sorry, I think I forgot one point that I wanted to say with good athletes. I think the other mistake that coaches oftentimes make is when they're not happy with let's say, back position a deadlift for good athletes, is they don't make them work hard enough. And I can tell you, I worked with a couple of people that were snatching way over 100 kilos. They had a super shitty bottom position in their deadlift, like with a rounded back, couldn't hold tension. You make them do very, very slow, eccentric work, isometric work in the bottom. They use the empty barbell and they are sweating like hell. And they have the feeling that they're actually doing work. If I'm like, yeah, whatever, just be in that position, extend a little more, of course they are like, oh, whatever, this is boring. And I think that the most thing that when people start trusting you, if they see that it works, I think that's how you build trust. If that's what I told these guys as well, that wrote me the email about, hey, I'm fearful that you changed the programming too much. It's like, you know what? If you have trained for 5 years and you don't have a muscle up, I tell you, it's way more satisfying in the end to have a muscle up in half a year because you did something differently than just doing over and over again what you have been doing. And I think that's it. Success is the stuff that people like the most. And being successful is like learning the stuff, increasing your PRs. Maybe it takes a little bit more time initially, but in the end, your progress will be so much faster.
Yeah, I think that the right word that you just said, I think is time. Most of the humans, they want fast results. It's in our mind, we want to get rich fast. We want to get the best job, the first job that we get, we want to get it, and we get disappointed that we don't get it. So, and I think CrossFit, you can see some people that in six months, 7 months, they are amazing athletes, but it's because they have a really good background, whatever it is. And some others take time. So you are comparing with the same people in the class or training with them. And then you're like, you know what? Fuck the technique. I'm just gonna try to reach the same weight that this guy is doing. He's been 6 months, I've been 2 years. He's lifting more than me. He hasn't really worked in technique, but it's maybe because his form is perfect already.
Yeah, you know what? I think there is a lot of genetics involved in what you need to have to be a good CrossFitter. It's the body type, it's the size, it's how easily you put on muscle mass. It's not that I couldn't put on more muscle mass. I could, but it's a ton of work for me. Some people naturally get there without any issue. If you're super tall, you won't be good at CrossFit. If you're super small, you won't be good at CrossFit. It's like it's very, very simple, basic facts about the sport that determine the body type. It's like gymnasts. If you look at gymnasts, there is no 180 or 190 gymnast.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't work. Yeah, the levers are not there to make you successful at the sport. And I think there's a lot of genetics involved also in in how fast you adapt to different training stimuli. I think if you adapt to hypertrophy training super well, but not very well to conditioning training, you'll have a hard time doing CrossFit. Of course, you can find ways of
work and
but in essence, and I think this is where I think the competition idea, I really like it in CrossFit, but most people do not really understand it. I think first of all, I think there's no point in competing against somebody if I don't know how to do it. You know, it's like playing tennis. Of course, we can play a tennis match, but if I don't know how to hit the ball and I always miss the ball, like it's not fun playing a tennis match. Most people do the same thing. Yeah, most people do the same thing when they start CrossFit. They think it's just about playing a tennis match, it's doing a competition. I think that's stupid. And I think the second part is I think it's not the competition me against you. It's the competition me against my former self. And I want to beat my own time and getting better at the movements. And if I'm in the lucky spot that I can beat your time as well, I'm glad. But I think very often what happens is that people go like, my only goal is to beat your time without moving better, without focusing on technique. And I think this is also where it gets a little bit.
Or that's when you see shitty reps or pro reps, you know, the typical thruster where you don't extend or you do this. And it's just because you can see somebody going faster, so you just want to go faster. There is no benefit on doing this instead of just putting all the way up and then down. And I think that one of the most the best feelings that you can have is when you do a workout. We do a lot of 4 minutes on, rest, repeat that 4 times, or 6 minutes on, something like that. And it's always like chest to bar, burpee, something that could be simple. Something that I feel really good at it is when I'm able to do the different rounds within the same time. So if it was 21, 15, 9 of whatever, 6 times, being able to maintain those 3 minutes of work, breaking at the same time, not having to, I'm going to do 3 reps, break, grab the bar fast, break again, and then I know that my squat is on the side, or I'm not cleaning, I'm hitting my collarbone or whatever. And then the time is like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something like this. Then it's like I ended up being totally fucked at the end of the WOD. But when you can do like 4, 4, 4, break on the 12, exactly. Then, and I don't need to see what the other guys are doing. But like, it's some of them are really better, some of them are worse than me, some are similar. But one day maybe I'm tired, and the other guy wasn't tired that day. So I agree that the competition should be with yourself and try to improve your movement as much as trying to compete with somebody else.
I mean, at least if you train, and for most people, it should be training, it shouldn't be competing. If you want to train and get better, I think you need to be in a range where you can still deliver high quality repetitions. If you can't, I think if you do a competition, of course, go ahead. If you earn money with it, go ahead. The question is like, well, what's the benefit of doing that stuff? It reminds me of the people that do Ironman or other stuff like triathlon training, and they have super bad times, but they take EPO or some other performance enhancing drug to get 10 minutes faster, half an hour. Like,
and
why the heck are you doing it? It's
great for you. Yeah, I think it's most of the people use the sport to run from their devils. Or evils, I don't know how you call it, how you say it in English.
No, I know what you mean,
so it's like a short-term thing, and probably hundreds of people that they go all in for 2 years or 1 year or 3 years, whatever it is. They get totally destroyed mind-wise and body-wise, and then they become fat or they become lazy. They've never done a sport again in their entire life, and they used to be the best. Well, not the best, but really good in your local area or whatever. And I think the goal, and that's also why Go Primal do what we do, is longevity, is to be able to maintain what you are doing now for the longest time, not trying to peak and then go here and then drop until when you are 50 or 55, when you actually need the most to be able to train and be healthy. Then you don't train because your knees are broken. You lost, your back is totally destroyed, so you can't really do anything else. And I think it's something that a lot of CrossFit boxers do it, but I would like to see it even more, focus more on the long-term competition than now that year competition, whatever the local competitions are going to be, and then people want to go all in instead of just, you know what, train for the competition that is going to be in 5 years. And when you get there, try to compete on the next one in the next year.
You know what, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think the most important thing, if you want to set up something like this, is having very strict standards. And I can tell you, I've been working with a couple of really good weightlifting coaches and also Austrian national team coaches. And a bunch of them were actually really good. And a bunch of them were not that good. And by not that good, meaning they were not able, for example, fixing early arm pulls. Because they were not able to, they always say, hey, you were still pulling early. There was no adaptation of the movement. There was nothing that allowed the athlete to be successful. And it was constantly, hey, you're still doing it, ha, 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 still doing it, ha, ha. That's fun. But I think one of the issues is, and I think one of the coaches that is really good is Eric Lau Kellner from Weightlifting 101. I don't know if you've
worked. He's really good. Yeah, he's a special guy though. He's from Copenhagen.
But that's not the point. But what I think he's really good at is he's very opinionated.
Yeah.
But I think he's very strict with his movements. And
he's really strict.
If he says, hey, you know what? I want you to extend up and not back, and you do back, it's the same weight again. It's the same weight again. You do it again. If you fuck it up, and I think sometimes it's not the best coaching strategy. I could probably help you more by giving you different feedback as well. But I think especially for good athletes or for athletes that want to lift more, it's a very good incentive to change the movement to being able to get more weight on the bar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A
lot of coaches are not there. They say, look kind of good. Go again.
Go ahead,
And if it's like it's 40 kilos, it doesn't look perfect. There's no way that you're going to move up and load. You need to fix that stuff before you. And I think this is very important, is having strict standards and not time standards. I think that's stupid. If you're a good athlete, it's not hard to roll like a 1K in under 3:30. If you're a strong big dude, well, whatever, of course I can do it. I think it should be also movement standards. If you can't do that movement as it's supposed to do, you have no business doing it. If you have a shitty pull-up and you can't hold body tension doing it and it looks crap, like I think even if you can do 20 of it, there's no benefit.
Yeah. I'm actually, one of the tips that Eric has in their weightlifting classes is that he doesn't count a rep when the snatch, when you walk once, if you move your feet, if you walk forward, that's a no rep. And I'm taking that into my weightlifting class as well, or weightlifting training.
I think, you know what, it's the simple things. This is the standard. If you break the standard, that's a no rep.
Yeah.
The standard is not a weight standard, it's a technical standard. Hey, if this doesn't look good, you need to go slower. Yeah, yesterday I had a class with rowing. I said, hey, if you can't maintain the form, the goal for you is not to go faster. The goal for you is to go slower and maintain the form. Even if the intensity is a little less for you in the workout, but you learn how to do it properly. And the next time you do it, you will be able to do it with good form faster.
Yeah.
And
I think it also makes a big difference that there is a social component on that. If you see the Scandinavian people moving, that the first thing that I realized when I moved to Denmark and I went to butchers, everybody was lifting perfectly. And I seen like guys doing things with 100 kilos, perfect technique. And I thought, if these guys are lifting like this with 100 kilos, how much? They look like, 65 kilos guys. And I was like, these guys must be super strong. But then they were maybe cleaning 110, no more than that. But they kept the technique. When you travel around Spain, you see, lifting like this, fine, just put more kilos, whatever it is, just keep going. There is a social component on that, on how to do things and be really detail oriented.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people are lacking. That's what I tell a lot of coaches when we do level 2s as well, is, hey guys, you need to have a picture perfect, clear image or video in your head of how the movement should look like. If you don't have that, it's very hard for you to fix something if it's wrong. If you go like, whatever, needs to be a little bit like that or that, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very hard for you to change anything. Like where to look at, like how to look at it, how to fix it.
Yeah.
I think it gets exceedingly hard.
Cool. But I think, Basti, we've been at over an hour. We were going to talk about this, but I think, to be honest, And I realized myself when I bought this and I started to look into breathing, I don't think this is the first step for breathing exercises. I think the first step is what we did before. Learn how to breathe without this. It's like doing a squat before, do an air squat, and then do a back squat later on. So maybe next time we can talk about how to train your breathing muscles with this.
I would love
but
to.
I think the whole breathing thing, breathing technique, breathing training, it could be something pretty good to do a small capsules of 20, 25, 30 minutes, something like this.
Yeah, what we should be doing next time is I'll assemble a bunch of studies that we can probably link to in the video.
Mm-hmm.
People can actually look at the positive effects of breath training in various different ways. And then we do some basic, I think assessments are always good. We do some basic assessments to test if you have any deficiencies. Then we show some basic breathing exercises. I think one of the most important things is that you actually are able to use different musculatures for breathing. So you should be able to use your diaphragm. You can use your chest muscles, your intercostal muscles, your serratus muscles to breathe properly. There's drills to actually facilitate that. And we can pick a couple of the muscles and see and work with them. And then I think also how to make breathing a little harder and what benefits are there to making it harder. Yeah,
sure. Cool. Let's do that. We'll do this next week.
It was a pleasure to talk to you, man.
Yeah, it's been it wasn't that much pleasure as we've been last week together. So it's always nice to be face to face.
Yeah, that's true.
But nice doing another podcast with you.
See you, man. Have a good day.
See you soon, Master. Yeah, you too. Bye. And watch out where you park.
Thanks.
Bye.